Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine Radio. Well, of Fate Magazine. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, and I am so glad you're here with me tonight. Recently I welcomed a really good, really great friend to Fate, and I'm welcoming her back because we did not cover nearly enough ground. She has some of the most interesting UFO related experiences, interdimensional experiences, and knowledge. She is a fabulous, oh my gosh, she's a fabulous researcher. She's a fabulous author. She has won seven, I think, awards as a best selling author. And she's one of my favorite people that's walking the planet today. And her name is Teal Gray. So, Teal, thank you so much for being with me. I'm glad to see you.
Well, thank you for having me. I just love coming on and being with you. You're amazing. So I'm honored.
Thank you. And I see you got the memo about the black shirt.
Yes.
And I am going to pull my volume back a little bit because I am a, yeah, a little bit loud, but I'm so really pleased to have you back. Thank you. I know that it's kind of a short stop between our shows, but the information that you have is so fascinating.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I hope everything looks okay. I have no power at this very haunted property that I live at.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
a minute, but I have flashlights everywhere. So I'm using artificial little power. So, we're okay, I hope.
Well, I think you look fabulous.
Yeah.
And, I had made a joke when we came on that it's not unlike how I envision your backyard looking
That's true.
quite often.
It has been, and,
So,
and I know you and all my other friends laugh. I say, I would love to move to a place that's just normal, nothing going on, and everybody just laughs and says, no, that's not going to happen.
that will never happen
That's,
because, I'm a firm believer and in my experience, if you catch their eye,
yeah.
then, and I'm not sure what causes their eye to be caught. Okay. But apparently some people do. I
Mm,
I feel like I have. I know you have.
yeah.
We have other friends that have experiences too.
Hmm.
But but once you catch their eye for whatever reason,
We have a little tracker to you.
you have and you have friends for life, as it were.
Yeah.
So
But,
and
I told them, I was like, just turn on the power. Maybe they like this little spooky look. I don't know.
I think they probably love that look
Yeah.
because
It's just like out in the woods. Come on back out in the back pasture.
I'm not going in your back pasture.
Even my Colts doesn't want to go out in my back pasture.
I think I make way too many friends without being back there.
That's right. That's right.
So, actually, it's not too many. I mean, I don't get really jonesed out by what I experience. I mean, to my knowledge, I've never been harmed. I don't have any memory of anything like that. I've, my husband, the affinity is so great that my husband, who doesn't really believe in, much as far as the paranormal goes, brought me out from a flea market because he felt like that needed to be in my office.
I love.
And so he and I were on an earlier show that'll air next Sunday that I wasn't I wasn't real sure how he was going to fly, but he's been in every live video I do. So
Now he's your bestie. He hangs out with you.
he's my bestie. He's got some creds. People like him, and
I
he
love
never
it.
fails to make friends.
I thought, oh, is this backdrop too much with the spaceships and the dark country road? I have something obviously that are more professional, but I thought I just felt like we would be having a little fun tonight. So I'm glad your friend is here.
He would be. He
Yeah.
would be. But something that we started out historically with UFO experiences being on dark country roads
Yeah.
with the Barney and Betty Hill abduction because that's what happened to them.
Right.
They were actually being pursued and were caught and taken.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you listen to the regression therapy tapes, it was terrible. And
Very
the fear
terrifying.
level.
I do believe, by the way, I believe their account, and
Absolutely, I do.
yeah. So you know, it's and it's also things about that case that nobody can just explain away. There was her dress that had a substance on it. There were just a lot of things about it, and some people say, "Oh well, people tell these stories; they just want attention." No, actually,
Not
that was
then.
very bad for them, and for most people, really don't want that attention because it's not something that you get accolades for. It's something that you get heckled for.
It
So
is.
some people, I mean, he was with the government and everything, that he could have lost his job. And you got to think, just now is it becoming where people can speak out about experiences and not have something, be the case with their jobs where, oh, this is not going to fly. You have to be quiet, retract your statement or something like that. That
Yes.
was a long time ago, and
Well,
there was no safety net back then.
no. And, you mentioned Betty's dress. And I know that listeners have heard me mention this in the past, but what I found interesting in my conversations with people who were personally involved with that couple
Hmm.
was that Betty wasn't disrobed because they could not work the zipper of
Right.
her dress.
Like, that's gonna save you, then let's zip her up, guys. I mean, that's yeah,
Zip everything.
true. I mean, sometimes it's something that simple, and that saved her that part of
That,
it, at
yeah.
least. But yeah, I've interviewed her niece, before, and
Yes,
I've known her
Kathleen.
niece as well. Yeah. Um, and it just, the whole story, everything surrounding it, all of it, I think is a really wonderful piece of extraterrestrial interactive history for somebody who might be new to this, because we think, who could be new to it? There's a lot of people that are just now
Yes,
starting to understand, like, oh, this is happening, it's on the news now, the government is coming forward more than ever. um,
until this week. We'll talk about that.
right. But I think it's a good thing to start with if you're just trying to get kind of a grip on a couple that had this experience and were in no way looking for notoriety about it. They did, of course, have that, but I still think the story holds up. I think to this day, it holds its weight.
I agree. And the niece that you're talking about is Kathleen Marsden,
Yeah.
she was a research partner and writer with Stanton Friedman.
Hmm.
She's got so many books on the topic, and
She's
you
a great.
should, she's a great human.
Hmm.
And she has been the director of MUFON's Experiencer Resource.
Hmm.
It's Experiencer Resource Group. She has been so involved in every conference that I've gone to over the years
Yeah.
that she's been at with leading experiencer groups. I actually
She was
was
a
able,
teenager at the time, so she remembers very well
yes,
the situation and her aunt, the whole
yes, and
evening.
the map. I mean, the star map and everything. And what really gets me is that when I was allowed to sit in on a experiencer group
Hmm.
because there are questions about some things that have happened to me that I felt like I needed to hear other people share. And obviously, I wasn't there as press, I was in there as Cat. And the things that I learned, I started getting, when I start getting a premonition or a psychic involvement type thing,
Hmm.
I start getting antsy.
Yeah.
And I was like a cat on a hot roof when I was in that group. And they were talking about different implants. One of them completely matched the experience that a friend of mine had with a triangle, basically a triad of implants in a thigh. This was the exact same pattern in someone else. And I'm just sitting there going, holy Maloney, right? I don't even know what to say at this point. So I didn't. I just listened. And Kathleen saw me being uncomfortable. And we talked about that afterward.
She can see the
And
signs.
she is a smart cookie.
Yeah.
And she has worked with a lot of people that were uncomfortable with acknowledging that they may have had, an
Them and
experience.
amazing as an amazing resource of help for them.
Yes. And, I'm very fortunate to be able to call her friend. She's one of those people that is trustworthy and
Mhm.
nothing bad will happen to you around her.
Yeah, I
Or,
agree.
she's cool.
Yeah,
But,
excellent.
but, when I say that I wouldn't go into your back pasture, I probably would go into your back pasture. I'm not that skittish,
I wouldn't
but
let anything happen to you.
I know you wouldn't.
You
Well,
know, it's very unique property. I will say that it's got a lot going on here. It has had, and I've been here 26 years, and it has had, extraterrestrial activity, um, unexplained sightings of craft witnessed by many people,
right,
some even in the government. And I mean, it just started out with a bang. They didn't wait to introduce themselves on the property. Even before most of the ghosts, this property sits on almost 3 acres, and the front house is a 4 3 bedroom. There's a little space, a yard in between the front house and the back house, and the back house is a 2 1. And so then you've got a lot of land towards the back and the sides. And behind me is probably, I don't know, at least 300 acres of just nothing. And then you get to FEMA land, right? So it's always been just wild open land with no way. People have tried through the years, including me, to purchase it, purchase part of it or something, because it just
right.
goes on forever and ever and ever. And it's layered underneath so many different names or uh, businesses, whatever. Nobody, even very professional um, real estate houses and groups and people who have had families through the generations that were part of the founding of this town here in Denton, Texas,
Right.
that they can't even find out who owns it. So we've always kind of thought it may be FEMA land, although it doesn't say that.
It may be
It's
some government agency land.
some government agency may have it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it started right off the bat.
So over the years that we have talked about your
Mhm.
property, I am always fascinated because it's not just UFO related experiences that happen out there.
Right. I
Some,
have an elemental
Mhm.
that is in the far back. That's what Mark is like. Oh no, no, thank you, because he saw it, and
Yeah.
it's so ancient that it's just terrifying for him to see.
And
And
I'm going to interject that this is not a man that fears much of anything in the metaphysical world.
I can't, because he goes in and clears out haunted homes. He's exorcised spirits and
Yeah.
people, and just there's nothing. So for me, I was like, what? And he's like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll
And
say it.
you would think, because he came and helped me with a case down in Pensacola. And well, I went there, he lives there.
Yeah.
But he has such a skill set that it's so difficult for me to envision him
Big.
struggling with something.
Yeah. No go. Yeah,
Yeah.
and visited through the years, and I just for comfort, he could stay in the front house, but for comfort and privacy, he always stays in the back house. And um So, I mean, it's beautiful back there. And so that one last time he was here, I was like, hey, you know, all the patio, I've redone all this stuff and the furniture, everything. Just, feel free anytime. Just go out there. The dogs are going to be up front. I won't let anybody in the back or the pasture. So you just roam around and make yourself comfortable. He's like, I'm in
So
the house. Thanks.
so he so did not.
He did not. He did not go out there. And there's been people. Martha Decker
Yeah.
is in law enforcement. You know her. She's been in. She's a paranormal investigator as well,
She's
and
pretty fearless.
she knows what's going on. And she loves to go back there, but her interaction is not with. She's never seen the elemental. She loves this little girl spirit that we through the years figure this used to be part of the Goodnight Loving Trail, the very back part of the
Okay.
pasture.
Yeah.
And at this time there's there used to be a seasonal creek, and then as things built up, it's just the remnants of what used to be a running creek, and of course
Right.
the wagons and things would come by. Just over the hill from me is a big, is a lake, is a big lake. So I'm very close to all that. So I think that the water, and just over the hill from me, all that flowing water and all the, it gets a little bit not mountainous, because when you speak with people that live where actually mountains are,
Texas.
mountains, but it's very hilly and beautiful, and lots of wooded acres, just hundreds all around. So it's on the outskirts for sure of town. But it's gorgeous. And the thing is, she loves to interact with this, as I said, this little pioneer girl, and it would happen day or night. And she just loves to come here. If you throw a golf ball, that just seems to be her thing. And we had a golf ball, and I was like, what is this doing here? I don't even golf, I don't even know where this came from. And she and a friend were visiting, and I threw it into the back, into the pasture, and we walked a few feet, and then it landed right at our feet. And we were astonished because
you had never told me that.
Yes. And so we
What?
ran back there and looked, because you can see, even though it's wooded, you can get there and see what's going on. There was nobody back there. And you would have heard like the little sticks breaking and stuff. It's very wild back there, let me say. Nothing but, coyotes and different things are back there. So nothing. And then she was like, what? And she took it. And she said, oh, you want to play? She threw it, and we kind of laughed. And I said, well, that was weird. And she just felt something. I was just tuned out, so I wasn't thinking anything. I just thought that was weird. And so many odd things happen. I don't take note of it. And I know that my youngest daughter told me one time, Mom, you need to look at your life, because what was that movie, Paranormal Activity, where the demons up in the with a picture of the family? And I was like, what is everybody acting weird for? Of course it has a picture of the family. It's been with the family all these years. And she goes, Mom, you need to think about your life, and so, maybe I do. But
I'm sorry, that's so funny.
It was funny. And we walked around the property a little bit more. I've got a lot of these beautiful, I called them at one time the Five Sisters. There's huge, just huge pecan trees that were in a perfect circle. So I called them like the Five Sisters. And inside, I mean, we're talking a big space. I've had weddings here, and people would get married in the center of that. And we had 200 people here with no problem. So, I mean, it's got a lot of room, a lot of space. And so we're walking under these Five Sisters, and whoop, right between Martha's feet, here comes that golf ball again. And like, also, they're a good shot, whoever, you know what I mean? It was like, you should play professional golf, because hole in one, like, I mean, over and over. And it wasn't like that go crazy here or here in the acres. It was boop right there, so we couldn't miss it. And she's like, oh, I'm loving this. And I was like,
I'm sure, yeah.
And so she's like, I'm gonna should we keep doing this? And we were on a time crunch to do something else. And I was like, well, you're staying. Can we do it again later? I mean, obviously she's going to play. And she did it again that night after dinner, and it showed right back up to her.
That is too cool.
She has a little rapport with this girl. Now, can I tell you quickly a real quick story about the little
You
girl?
can tell me a long story if you want to. This is awesome.
Okay. So this same pioneer little girl, we're assuming, she, the reason I say she has long blonde curly hair and a little shift dress like you would in the pioneer times, very simple, very pretty, is because there have been through the years so many people that did not know any stories about this place or the back house. She does not come to the front house. There are certain spirits that
Really?
only are on the land. There are certain spirits that are only in the back house. And then there's a whole nother set of spirits in this front house. And then we have some odd energy, I would say, in the very front part of the property, which is also big, long driveway, because there's been so many wrecks. We're not on a curve. We're in a nice straight place. Everything very visible. Nothing, no reason for the amount of wrecks we've had through the time at this property. And one girl, was run off the road. She was hit by another car, and then her car landed against my giant concrete in the front of the property, and she died. And so there's a good story to go with that. So just remember that one. But let's go back to the little girl. So this little blonde girl has been seen by many people, and they're like, "Oh, who's the little girl visiting? It's cold. Shouldn't you have
a jacket?"
And then we outlook. And my one daughter lived in the back house for a little bit, the older daughter, and she kept seeing her show up at night closer and closer to her bed, but always with something tucked behind her back and a mischievous smile. So that was scary, right?
That could be a cottonmouth.
It could be anything.
I'm sorry, my mind goes to snake. I can't help it.
We have snakes here. We have we have all this business. And I was in the back house. I used to do historical costuming for the Dallas Historical Society and different other places, Sherman and different places where they would put on these historical events. So I was sewing, the big gowns have long trains. And so I was sewing, and I was in a hurry, and I was like, whew, I think I'm going to make it. Okay. So I was just sewing away, and it was getting dark. And I thought I didn't want to stop and turn on the lights in the house because I wanted to finish. And I realized halfway through, you know what? I've been sewing one side correctly and one side has been the other way. So I was going to have to rip that out and start over. And right when I said I was quiet, just in my head, I was like, oh my gosh. And right at that moment, I can still remember the hair on my head going up and down my spine was chilled. You heard this little girl go right by me. And then
my gosh.
Shoes clickety clack as she's laughing.
That's so weird.
Out the back door, because she only goes in the back and then in that back house. So I thought, okay, don't show fear, engage. You know my rules.
I do.
No engagement. Just shut things down. And I turned the light on so I could get from where I was in the back, one of the back bedrooms, to the front of the house. Because even the back house, it's a good size house. And so I just got in there, locked the door, and I did not go back in until daylight and I brought a couple people with me. I just was like, no. But that was my interaction with her. There was a family that had moved in next door, that property. And again, there's some land between my house and that house, right? But the fence goes just past the five sister trees. And there's something very energetic about the center of that circle. They're just
there would be, right? I mean, it was planted that way for a reason.
Somebody, which makes me think, what was going on in this place ever? the lady next door, I was out doing some gardening, and the lady, whatever next door. And so I had to go over because you can't hear, it's too far away. And so I went over and I said, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." And she goes, "Gosh, I've been trying to get your attention and everything for so many times, hoping I could see you out here so we could set up a play date." And I was like, I kind of tilted my head. I was like, uh,
Well, all right.
yeah, I was
I'll
like,
play with you.
I've never had an adult play date. Well, I have, but not, not with a woman. And so I thought, what? And then, because I had no grandchildren at the time, I had no young children. My girls, were in their 20s, they were grown. And I was like, a play date. And she's like, "Yes, with I'm assuming," she goes, "No offense, but I'm assuming it has to be your granddaughter." And I was like, "Oh, I don't have a granddaughter." And she's like, "Well, who are you babysitting? Like somebody's, I mean, she's at your house all the time. I mean, she comes from the back house out here and plays with my son at the fence line. I've invited her in, and she said I can't go." And so I thought, oh, well, I understand being protective. I thought if I could speak with you, my son.
Holy cats.
Yeah. So she was so solid, and she is so solid at many times that people don't know. And she mentioned, I was going to ask, not blaming you or condemning things, but she's always in that little same shift dress. Is that like her play dress, and that's what she can play in? I know some people
Oh,
get
Jill.
about clothes, don't mess up your clothes, and that's her play dress. She goes, "But sometimes it's pretty chilly out here." And I've offered her something, and she either doesn't speak to me or she just scurries away. And she's like, "But you seem like a nice person." I said,
At least she's not disapparating in front
right,
of
right.
people,
And so
right?
the little boy goes, "Sometimes she scares me." And I said, "She does?" And the mom, of course, is listening too. And I said, "She does?" And he goes, "Yeah, sometimes she plays nice, and then sometimes she's wanting, oh, she gets mad when I won't come over." And I told her, I'm too little, I'm younger, too little, I can't come to your house, I can't climb the fence, I can't come over. And so the funny part also, that part of the fence is not a wooden fence, it's horse fencing, because there used to be cattle back there. And so they could see each other and they could play easily through the fencing. So I said, "I have to tell you something, and I don't want to scare you or upset you.
Too
However,
late.
that's, do you want the little boy, do you want your son to go in?" She goes, "No, I think he should hear whatever you're going to say." And I said, "Maybe not." I said, "Well, she's not alive." And the lady's like, "Really?" And I said, that's a ghost." And she's like, "Oh no, you don't, no, 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 no. She plays, I mean, she moves it.
Right?
You can see the toy moving. You can see the toy that my son, hands her, because she says she can't come on this other side of the fence. Like she can only play with something he gives her on this side." I don't understand the boundary. Mark and I have thought
Yeah.
about that. Like, for what is the boundary with her? Like, she can't even go on the other side of that fence. She
Maybe
doesn't go.
she can't leave your property.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if that is something to do with how she died or something to do with her mindset, that she's still waiting maybe on her family to come back, and so she can't move. We don't know. So the lady then said, "What? Wait." And it all started to come together for her. And I said, "The reason you see her in that same dress is because I'm assuming that's the dress she died in, or was buried in." And yeah, no, dead girl. And so, sorry. And
But
she
you
got on
did
her
not.
mobile phone, and her parents came swooping over here. They packed up. They never came back to that house again. They moved away. And the little
No
boy was,
way.
"Hey, do you see her?" And I said, "I don't." And he goes, "She's going into the back house right now." And I said, "Is she?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm not going in the back house right now. I'll go in the front house." And he just was like, "Mm-hmm."
I get that. Yeah.
Back, because
Holy
she
wow.
could not believe they had had so much interaction with this little dead child.
So basically he's saying that she is spicy nice.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes sense because there have been mischievous things that she's done through times, like, what is she hiding behind her back? And other people have said, oh, I tried to speak to her or whatever, and she just kind of gave me a little bit of a glare, and other people have said that she smiled at them, but it was scary. It was like, and
Yeah.
so, yeah. Um,
People say that I have scary smiles. I don't believe them.
well,
But when seriously, I mean, all of these horror movies that center around children
mhm,
tend to um, go that way,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because that's kind of how they draw in people like
right. They
her
want
with
to
the little
look
boy.
beautiful, but they're sinister. And then you also have to think, we've talked about this on other shows
Mhm.
about the other topics, delving more into ghosts and dark spirits and entities and things. You don't know that really is a little girl. That's just what we're
You
seeing.
don't. I mean, because deception is a big part of demonology.
It is. The
So,
only reason I feel, just because I have had interactions with several different demonic entities through my life, I didn't ever feel that. Doesn't mean I'm right. It just means I didn't feel that. I did feel
well,
the mischievous. I mean, she did, but I mean, she was obviously right there with me while I was making my sewing mistake, and she
yeah,
it wasn't maniacal laughter, but it was just like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious, and she's
yeah.
gonna take that
Like,
whole thing and
like,
redo
how
it.
could you do that? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just,
That's
oh.
that's something that I think can flip either way so quickly.
Yes, yeah.
Um, it's kind of like when I do not like entities in my house.
I don't either, but
I just
what,
don't.
yeah,
You can't, yeah, they show up,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And my husband
Banish them. I
has
have to banish them because I feel like they've been here before me, and
yeah.
they have
Well, if
not.
they're on your property,
Now I do threaten them sometimes. I'm like, if this stuff doesn't calm down, or if this or that, something, then I'm going to banish you. And then it will calm down.
well, my rule now is that if I feel something like that, I'm calling Mark.
Yeah,
I will give him an all expenses paid trip to Birmingham.
come and clean you
Right.
out. Yeah, yeah. And I
Oh,
mean, he's great at it.
oh,
He uses my products too.
yes,
And
he does, and he points
needs
that
them.
out to people too.
Yeah, he's so sweet about that. And people ask me, why have you spent so many years like concocting these special blends? And I'm thinking, you have no idea why, do you?
That's
Um,
right.
but they are,
They
So
work. They work for one thing. Um, Mark, yeah, the house that I mentioned in Pensacola, it was not my house. It was a friend's house, and he had noticed that his dog could not go or would not get out of his truck to go into it. And this was going to be like a trip to Pensacola for Concert's house, whatever. They're in Orange Beach, but they bought this house there because it's so cute. It's an old row house. It's just precious. And the couple 2 doors down that was in the sequence of row houses were having activity that was affecting their animals
hmm
too. And that's why when we went, um, my friend's name is David, and he was there to start with. And he wound up having to leave due to the time. But Mark channeled, it was the first time I'd worked with a true channel,
he
and
he is
it
really
was
made
wild.
that.
It was wild, and it was a great experience. And I was concerned about how long he was there because one thing that didn't happen where there I didn't get instructions on bringing him out of that, but he handled that himself.
Hmm.
So I didn't know how that worked.
Yeah, and
But
I've had an experience. We went to Gainesville, Texas, where there was the great hanging, largest number of people hung at a time. And it was, my family were freedom fighters at the
okay.
time. And so they had started a freedom fight to help the slaves, and people don't think about that so much in Texas, but they were here, not the
They
numbers of
were anywhere that people had gone.
them. Yeah, yeah. And so anyway, because he was an uncle, and my grandfather had started the freedom fighters in this area, and they wanted to make a statement, I suppose, and he was scooped up with a bunch of other people, and they were mass hung there. And so we were there for a paranormal, investigation and weekend where, I did a gallery, and I asked Mark to come up and do the gallery with me because I thought it was so strange. They had a great medium right there. I just didn't understand that. But he was new to the area too, so that could have had something to do with it. But anyway, I brought him up, and we went to the park that night where everybody had. It's now a park with a monument, but it had been just
Seems odd.
very odd. He was channeling and doing automatic writing, and
Yes.
told me, he's like, just turn the page. And I was like, same as you. Do I need to do something at a certain time, or is there a problem I should look for? Do you need help? He brings himself in and out of those channeling sessions.
Yes.
And so I was just, he was doing the automatic writing, and he was channeling so much that he gets sometimes superimposed faces.
That happened. Okay. I'm so glad that you brought that up because that was one of the things that, and when he started to have the face alterations, my camera stopped.
Right.
I was filming the whole thing.
Mhm.
And that was the point. It was like the spirit realized, I mean, yeah, we're talking the hair was all mussed up, because Mark's hair is a particular way and he
Right.
likes to look the way he looks.
Yeah.
Well, his hair was disheveled and he was slouchy, and Mark is very.
He's very upright. Yeah.
So he was all slouched back in the sling chair and he was knocking the bangs out of his face and stuff like that. And then the face started to change. The voice did change.
Uh-huh.
And, and he was complaining. I'm going to tell you this because this isn't confidential. And, if the person whose home it is listening, they already know this.
Mhm.
But the complaint that the spirit had when we were talking was that I don't like the way my picture is drawn. Like, I'm not drawing your picture. He was like, no, the one on the post office wall, it doesn't even look like me. It shows me as black. I'm not black. And I was like, you're on the post office wall? And Lori, my trusty sidekick, says, who'd you kill? You know? And I'm like, oh my gosh, let's not really irritate this spirit because this is a very powerful spirit and he's a jerk. He's something else, but yeah, I caught myself in time. And when Mark started shifting into that persona, it was a full physical change. It was the voice and cadence change. It was the mannerisms change. But what got me, and I've seen, Mark over and over, I know him.
Very well, yeah.
And to see the full, it was almost like his features shifted. It wasn't just the holding of the mouth it was the actual feature
You had a wax
shifted.
face come over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very, very unique.
It was disconcerting.
Well, yeah, that too.
I
Remember, Kat, there's nothing really wrong with your life. There is something wrong with mine. I need to check it when you're like, well, of course their face changed.
Well, it's now I know that's a thing, right? And I won't be quite as surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing though, what he does, but and when he's in that state, now he's a great psychic medium anyway. But
Yeah.
when he's in that state, to hear him give information in different, tone, voice, whatever, and a visual, along with the automatic writing, he was telling people things that nobody, even in their family, very, few people knew about a murder that had happened in the family where another family member had been the one to kill them, and like different things. It was just so many things, and they kept screaming and running away. And then he just kept on doing what he was doing, and I'd say, hey,
Okay.
this person's gone. Come on.
So they were screaming and running.
They were screaming and running out in the middle of the park, right? And then I would say, hey, they're gone. Do you want to read somebody else? And he goes, they'll be back. And he goes, but and he would start with somebody else, and he would, continue these different
Would
readings.
they come back?
And here she would come back. Somebody would go get her, and she'd bring her back and calm her down.
Oh my
And
goodness.
she wanted to keep hearing it, but every time he would tell her a truth that she knew, no, there was no way he could have looked it up. I mean, because people always have this,
Right.
maybe this, or maybe it's in history. But this was not like that. This was private, hidden family business, so to speak. And there was no way he could know it. And she did this 3 times. He would tell her something major. Yes, oh my God. Off she'd run. And then a couple of people go get her, call her, bring her back. And the last time I was like, if you just don't go off screaming, you could hear more. I don't know if I can take more. It's perfect. It's spot on. It's amazing. It's true. And then he would tell her this or this or this. And then finally she came. After the 3rd time, she came and she sat down because he had told her what he wanted to tell her. And he changed into someone else, and was, deeply engulfed in reading for somebody else. And nobody else ran screaming. That was the only thing. It was just, it happened 3 times. So we were like,
Well, it just freaked her out. I mean,
it was,
when you think something, especially if you had an ancestor who murdered another ancestor.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
it was close. I mean, it's like,
yeah.
close in a generation. So, he's amazing. He's absolutely amazing.
But because we're not the Scots, right? we don't fight family to family. Well, Hatfields and McCoys, so that's not true.
Yeah.
But I just think that is amazing. And we have UFO Bigfoot in chat who said howdy. So
I think I've never seen a Bigfoot, but it is in not my last book, but maybe the one before that.
yes,
I think so. Yeah.
I think it is.
And Field Guide to the Other Side. My father, I have my father and my 3 older brothers. They were 8, 10, and 12 years older than me. And I was always, they took me with them. And so I was always fishing and, camping and doing these things from the time I was young. We were in deep East Texas, and this would have been, I was about 8, so it would have been 69. And so I was born in 61. And we were, camping, and I was like, boy, we're really deep out here, And he was like, yeah, I wanted to take us farthest out. My friend owns this property, and so we're going to camp out here because I want to teach y'all archery, different things. And I wanted to make very sure we were not near anything or anybody. And he also wanted it to be a woodsy setting, not just, something that he set up in the backyard or whatever, So we were going to go fishing after that. There was a pond that wasn't too far off. You could walk. And so I wasn't afraid because this was something I grew up with.
Right.
Well, all of us, as it got late, we had a campfire. We were, just, I think it was marshmallow time. I think we had already gotten through the hot dogs and all that stuff. So marshmallow time. And but it was late, and we heard crushing it's kind of like discernment for spirits. I had a little bit of a discernment, and I think a lot of people do, for sound
Right.
and the weight of something, the sound that a different weight of something would make, something light, a deer. Like I had heard many deer, not then, not in that area, not that night, but before. So I was used to hearing deer or coyotes, or, the sound that maybe a possum, or the different sounds they make, little scurries versus
Right.
stick. This was heavy. And my father and brothers were not spooked easily. And I remember to this day, I remember being, that age and thinking, oh, I should be afraid, because I could see, and he was an
Yes.
ex-Marine sergeant, and he had done many tours, overseas and far away. So he was a guy's guy, and so were my brothers, but they were concerned. And because I think we all had that same feeling that this was something big. It was either a big person, we didn't go to Bigfoot in our heads at all, but it was a big person. And so they were like, okay, we're going to go check it out. You stay here at the campfire. And I thought, is that really better? Because sometimes I had seen not a lot of shows back then, but
Yeah.
by the time you're
Well,
8 or 9, you've
yes.
seen enough to know that sometimes being alone at the campfire is not the best thing. So, but
As you're highlighted.
they're there, they plant you, so I sat there. And they did not stay very long, and we did not even. He put out the fire, and we gathered our stuff and used flashlights, and he got us back to the car. We came back the next day to collect all our stuff, and we left because, aside from that heavy, twigs and sticks breaking as it moved through the brush, there was, and I know people say, "Oh, that was just a coyote," but it wasn't. It was a odd, kind of guttural yet high pitched scream, I guess, because it wasn't a howl. It was something I'd never heard before, and it was certainly something they had never heard before. And he had been to many countries and never heard anything in any of those countries like that, right?
Did he
And
have did he have experience with big cats?
yes, yeah, because
No, and he still didn't recognize it.
where we grew up, we had a panther that was a black panther, and everybody said, "Oh, that can't happen." And then, of course, there were some sightings and stuff. So
Right.
that scream that they have, it wasn't that. It wasn't the
No.
scream of a cat or a mountain lion or
Right.
anything. It was the oddest thing. I've never heard anything like that before. And as we outed myself, I'm 62. I'll be 63 this year. I have not since.
Yeah.
So, and also for them to they never, ever, even if they thought it was something weird or a big animal or something, we wouldn't have left where we were. You know what I
Right.
mean? But we did. So I've always thought, oh, maybe get close to one. I don't know.
Do you think they saw it?
They never told me they did. They never said a thing, but maybe they wouldn't have, because they didn't have any experience with that kind of thing. And maybe they wouldn't have even known where to place that, and certainly wouldn't have maybe told me to just protect me from
Sure.
knowledge. I don't know. Never, never, never know. That's a big question mark. So I don't know if I've ever encountered one or not, but what that sound was, now through the years, you hear those shows and they feel like they have this on tape or
Yes.
whatever, and it sounded very much like that.
I have heard those. In fact, is it the Pisgah Forest that's over near Asheville, North Carolina? That place is notorious for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And I have heard my friend Denise Pridemore was doing a show with a woman that lives on the edge of that forest, and she sits outside and records them. And
Wow.
I too, I am not a rural person by nature. I did, however, spend like time in exile in rural Georgia for several years.
Yeah.
And we had big cats, and we had um coyotes and everything else too. But the big cat was the closest I've heard to
I would agree with that, except for it's almost like, and I'm not putting in so just before anybody goes, nope, I'm not comparing it to something demonic. I'm only trying to say this.
Right.
I'm expressing that. Except for the big cat sound, it's almost like, how when something is dark and it's like
Yes.
the rushing waters of 1,000 voices and it's animal and human
Yes.
at the same time and it's unexplainable. This has that multifaceted, to me, it
Her
had
recordings
a
did.
multifaceted sound that was so deep and so loud that I'm no cat's big enough for that.
Exactly. Because until I heard her recordings, I just, and it sounds ugly, but I really just pretty much assumed, you know what that does, that the
You eat
people were
crow
missing
feathers.
out on cats, right?
Yeah.
Because some of the big ones sound like a woman screaming. I thought
And
this
that's
one
what
was a
the
woman
cat.
screaming.
Even we have a cat that's a big wild cat that's over that lives near the lake here, and it's been several years since I've heard it, but it does sound like a woman screaming.
Yeah,
It really
I
does.
thought it was. And
It's
excuse
like
me.
that. This was that.
Yeah.
That deep guttural
Yeah.
loud,
And
and it went so far, or at least that was my assumption because it was so loud and the sound almost enveloped that forest, and it wasn't just surprise scaring. It would
yeah.
just, I mean, it would make everything go silent before it even happened. There was no crickets, there was no um anything. How there's all the sounds in the forest even at night. It comes alive in a different way.
Oh,
Everything
when
went
it goes, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say everything goes silent and then poof.
Yeah, when things go quiet around me, I
Mhm.
do not stay.
Yeah. Well, now I did
I
not know
really
that
won't.
many years later, even when I go speak in Jefferson, Texas, we were back deep in the woods, back in like that area, in East Texas, and they have, this Bigfoot statue there downtown, and there's been a lot of sightings there, but I did not know that until many, 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 years later. Um, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I talked with Victoria Monday last week, and that's why I know there's a Bigfoot a Bigfoot statue there.
Uh-huh.
So we actually I was taking my grandsons down to the beach, and there is um an evergreen. That's where Kanika sausage is and stuff like that. And that used to be all that was in that area, but now apparently it's become the Mecca exit because they have all the wonderful fast food, Zaxby's and Wendy's and all this other stuff there now. But as you pull into the area where the restaurants are, there's a Bigfoot statue just
Right.
inexplicably there.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was like, oh, we're going to stop and take a picture with that
Right.
because the boys loved it, right?
Oh, yeah. Great fun.
But I I've never been on a Bigfoot, just a Bigfoot expedition. I have been camping, which really is against my religion, and had stuff happening around me
Right.
that made me go, it's probably
I've
time to
not,
get in the
I've not
car.
done an investigation. I do know a lot of Bigfoot hunters,
Me
um,
too.
and I've met through the years, but I've never gone on one. I actually would
I've,
be quite interested in one to see if that could be replicated, that sound, if I in person. I don't
well,
know.
I would, there are very few people I would do that with, but I would do that with the right people,
Mm-hmm.
people that took it seriously. We have a gentleman here
Do that.
in Alabama that's Alabama Bigfoot and Paranormal or
Mm-hmm.
Paranormal and Bigfoot, Jonathan.
Or maybe you
And
could schedule something next year. Do it.
well, if you will come,
I
I
will.
will do that. I am not I have seen videos of him like he's walking out every time he comes out of the woods, it seems he has a camera. He puts the camera on his shoulder and he's
Right.
just filming behind him. And I saw one because he does it all the time. This isn't just a one shot deal. And I saw something get up from the side of a tree. It looked like a bush.
Mm-hmm.
And then as he was leaving, it stood up and kind of shook out some, and then just turned around and started walking the other way. And it looked like a juvenile, which are feisty.
That makes perfect sense, to what I understand about the species, if
Mhm.
you use that verbiage. Luckily, that's what that happened, but because sometimes they'll throw things,
Or people. They
at
throw
people.
people.
They'll come in. I mean, I do. I don't think, me, I'm a skeptical believer about
Right.
everything. But I do believe a lot of the stories because, again, it's from people that um, there's just nothing to gain from saying something, that terrifying, and the look of it, was trying to break in your house, or, and so many times I know that nothing's come back scientifically, but there have been people that, found patches of the fur, the hair, different things. So I just think it's a matter of time. The other aspect that's interesting to me is that there are a lot of times UFO sightings in that same area that Bigfoot
Yes.
is seen. And then, if that's a possibility, of course, we all know everything's a possibility, but that would explain why, because I know the question that begs from people, well, why is there no bones? Why is there no this? Why isn't that? Well, it doesn't mean they don't bury their own. But also, if it is in some way something that is visually what we're seeing as a Bigfoot, but actually is a type of extraterrestrial
Yeah.
being, entity, maybe, you know, maybe. Because also
Maybe.
I'm writing that, Bigfoot's Aliens and Angels book. So angels, I mean, it's like there's so many aspects of
Furry
what
angels.
people have seen as angels that could also be aliens. They could be another species that have a certain look. Bigfoots could be something that have a certain look. Then there could be the grays. There could be the, this, that, the other thing. I mean, there's different
So,
types of humans. Why not?
so many options.
There's a lot of options. So I don't know. Ask your little friend behind you. See what he says.
He's the strong silent type, but we have to go to break.
Okay.
So we will be back. For everyone listening, y'all come back with us because we have more wondrous fun stuff to go through, and Teal Gray is never boring. So y'all just come right back. We'll come back too.
Debbie Ziegelmeyer is an experienced diver, dive trainer, and UFO investigator who has researched sites around the world that have water-related UFO activity. We now know that even the Pentagon admits that there are unknown objects in the skies and underwater around the world. Debbie compiled an amazing book to catalog many of these sightings. The Alien Colonization of Earth's Waterways, a reference guide to UFO, USO, water-related activity, has received rave reviews by UFO researchers and the public. The book is available at Amazon.com. Unlock the mysteries of the spirit realm with the new book, Meeting Wallace. In this channeled work by renowned psychic medium Larry Costa, the reader will delve into the profound wisdom of his spirit guide, Wallace. Together, they share the transformative journey of harnessing psychic powers from the celestial plane. Discover the extraordinary psychic gifts that have empowered Larry on his path, and immerse yourself in a thought-provoking and awe-inspiring read. Meeting Wallace is a groundbreaking endeavor, and it is a perspective seen through the eyes of a spirit guide. Discover the wisdom of the spirit realm alongside actual photographs of ghosts and spirit guides. Get the book Meeting Wallace by Larry Costa at Amazon.com.
While most near-death experiencers return to this plane of existence with alluring tales of their time spent in the presence of the divine, what happens when one crosses the veil into the afterlife, into the void? In the new book, Dying to Meet Them, Mindy Toutfest describes her journey to the afterlife after a devastating aneurysm, how a strange turn of events would lead her to spiritual growth, divine healing, UFO experiences, and a greater understanding of the universe. Get your copy of Dying to Meet Them today at Amazon.com or visit unxmedia.com for more information on this book and more amazing selections from UnX Media Publishing at unxmedia.com.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am Kat Hobson, your host, with my little pal Al. Whoops, wrong way. And I am so glad to welcome you back because my guest tonight is Teal L. Gray, who is one of the best authors I know, one of the best humans I know, and somebody that I'm really proud to call my friend. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be your friend.
Well, thank you. So we are kind of a mutual admiration society. You know, you just really have so much good information, lots of fun, and I enjoy talking to you.
I do to you too. So it's great fun. I hope everybody's enjoying it.
I hope so too. I am, I wanted to revisit the Bigfoot things that we were talking about, and one of the things Jonathan does sometimes go out into the woods by himself, which I consider not my color Kool-Aid, and I don't always think it's a good idea. I know that he was out with a group in this particular instance, and if I'm not mistaken, he is who told me that they heard somebody screaming and fading like they were being dragged away quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought, no, that's the reason I don't go in the woods.
It happens. I mean, people disappear all the time.
Yeah, they do. But it was going too quickly really to be being drugged by us, right?
Right.
So that's something that,
It's amazing, apparently,
yeah. And so I'm really impressed with the people like Jay. Oh, he always tells me I get his name right every time, but usually I practice. But Jay Bayerchin,
hmm
um, up in Wisconsin, they track through the the great frozen north often as a family. They hike and stuff. And when I've been interviewed him several times, it's always amazing to me because I've seen footage of what looks like a Bigfoot
Yeah.
that was behind his daughter
Wow.
that made him be very aware of how fast they move. And um, so, anyway, I just wanted to mention that you should always be safe in the woods because you don't know what or who is in there.
Right.
And
I'm wrapping up another book for the History Press, Arcadia Press. For I did Haunted Denton. This is Haunted Weatherford, Texas. And in there, I always put in all the books, that a little forward or afterward of just, hey, everybody, it's not just entities, Bigfoot, cryptids of all kinds. It's there's people now who
yeah,
break in and live in mausoleums, or they're hiding, or you have to be careful not to be robbed, attacked in some way. And I always say, please just think, like, it's not even fearful, it's just good planning, it's just
yes,
common savvy street sense, if you will. Let people know where you're going, where you're going to be. Try to go at least with one other person, but if you can go in a group, that's so much better. Although we could touch on something, a story it just came to me, so I apologize. I don't have the details correct, so I'll be very big brush with this. But there was this has been some time back, and there was a group, I believe it was students and friends that camped, and I think it was it Russia? You'll remember this, I think. And their tents were just
oh
smashed.
yes,
They were all gone. But there had been some talk or notes or whatever that they thought like a Bigfoot was watching them. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
And
And
nothing could ever be, that's a mystery. They tried finding things, and it's been researched over and over and over. And
for
it's been
years,
for years, but that was a whole group, and they weren't safe. So at least go with one other person.
well, and make sure that you have some form of protection.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
because
don't think
realistically,
good.
there are things that live there that you won't win a battle with, even if it's not a Bigfoot.
Even if it's a bear, a bear, a mountain lion will snap your neck in a second. Like, I mean,
That's what they go for.
yeah, that's what they go for. I did not know. How did I not know this? Like, as if I was born today. But we've had, and nobody told me. I'm like, thanks, people. We've had several through the years, big. These aren't barn owls. These were, I don't even know what they were. Big, like as tall, when they stood up, as tall as my mailbox, like big. And there was one that was just been about a month and a half ago. It flew from one tree. This was in the daytime too, and it flew to another tree closer to me, and was I was like, oh gosh, beautiful, so big. What are you doing out in the daytime? And it looked at me, and I didn't think anything of it, and I went farther out into the land. I didn't know that owls would attack people, and that they've been killed because the claw gets them in the neck, but it's not aiming for their neck. I was like, it's not? Oh, okay, it's an accident. Well, they're aiming for your eyes. And I was like, what? I never
What
that.
an owl is?
And then as I bring it up to people, they act like where have you been? Everybody seems to know about this. I never heard that ever. And then as I researched it, there's a lot of stories about that. I didn't know. So There you go.
That is just
Even an owl could get you.
so well.
I didn't know.
I was told that because I had a friend who is Native American, and she came in on a phone conversation when I saw something. Yeah, I'm used to being at the beach. I see pelicans, and I always laugh and call them pterodactyls, and I saw a bird shadow, but I didn't see the bird. And it was so, so bizarre. And so we just happened to be on the phone at that moment. And I was like, oh, Lee, look, I just saw like this huge shadow, but I don't see the bird. She said, oh, that's my Thunderbird that I sent to you.
Oh wow!
And I'm like, you sent me a Thunderbird? And she's
Thunderbird.
like, yeah, I just felt like you were threatened. And, I didn't know what to do with that. So I just sent a Thunderbird because I couldn't get there.
American, so I think that's a love gesture.
But who thinks that you're seeing a Thunderbird, right?
You wouldn't, things you don't know,
Because that was in Birmingham, Alabama. That was not at the beach. It was not a pelican. It was not a heron.
Yeah.
But we do have cranes, but I don't have water around this house.
Right.
So
yeah.
I was just kind of like,
what is that giant shadow?
that is, well, I'm going to tell you that I came under a paranormal assault on an investigation, and it came from the client herself.
Oh, wow.
Not intentionally, but somebody was doing Reiki on her that did not know how to do it. And if you don't know how to do Reiki, do not do it, because instead of throwing to the ground, they were flinging out.
Oh.
And I didn't know what it was. I just felt like something had hit my elbow, like, a prickly, buckwheat kind of a thing.
Right. Like, yeah.
What are those called? Like a black.
Like what you're talking about. Yeah.
The tree.
Yeah.
So I thought that's what I got hit with. So I didn't think anything about it, but I was like, holy wow.
Yeah.
And then but it got my attention, and I turned around and I saw the man just go like that. And I was like, stop, just stop. And so, I got home and it was still wonky. So that's who I called, because it was middle of the night after an investigation. Not just anybody's going to be up, but I thought she might. And I just sent her a text message, and she called me right back. She was like, oh, well, you have an attachment. That's not like you have a physical attachment. So we're going to need to get this taken care of, but you need to do like Epsom soaks and other things, cleansings and stuff.
To get it off. Yeah.
To get it off. And I mean, because she was like, it damaged your aura.
It's a residue you can't see, but it is very much there.
Yeah. And it damages your aura.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not know anything could damage my particular. I mean, I felt like I was so protected,
right.
but I was not strong enough with maybe if I'd known what was happening. But it did make me feel better, because she also told me like in 2 or 3 weeks later, she was like, it's healed. I've never seen somebody heal that fast. And I'm like, well, thank goodness, because I have another investigation. Not with those people though, not with them. But it was disconcerting. Stuff happens in the paranormal, and
you never know what you don't always know what you're dealing with. You were there for a particular situation, but you see this as another external situation that came into that you didn't know was happening. And there you go. Yeah, you don't know. You can't assume so many things, and you can't also, at the same token, you can't discount things as like, impossible. No,
it's not ever impossiple.
So tired. I told you this last time, of eating crow. I don't dismiss any. Let's wait and see.
Well, it goes better with ranch. So. Everything is better with ranch.
Or anything to get it with it, just the chewing of the feathers. Do you want to hear another cryptid story?
I do.
This is not my story, but it was your bird, your
my Thunderbird.
I just blanked out for a second. A story reminds me of this. This happened to my middle brother, very big outdoorsman. And several friends that were with him that I had known since since I was born. They'd always been friends. They're very no nonsense guys. They've been all over everywhere. And just don't spook, I mean, they're just things like just nothing. And this particular night, they were at a lake in Dallas, and they were out. It was middle of the night, because they would go out and they used to set what they called lines,
Trot
like lines, yeah. And they would do that, and they would set them or they would check them, whatever. And they did that, I think, because of the way the lines were, make sure that nobody would get tangled up in them or that sort of thing. Plus, they would actually just cast and fish. So they were doing all these things, and boy, the light, something, my haunted house, they're having fun with these flashlights, and they're making them super bright. So I apologize. Sometimes there's like,
That's okay. I love when stuff happens in your house anyway.
I guess so. At least they're keeping them burning bright, so that's good. But anyway, so they were very quiet. That 2 to 3:30 at time, when it's just things are
Yeah.
deep asleep. Yeah, it's kind of quiet. And the story was, and they didn't want to talk about it. My brother has since, he passed away young, actually, at that same lake when he was 27. But this had happened several years before. And the other people, I've pressed them over the last few years, just like, could we talk about the details? I just think that this could be, y'all had experienced this or that. They're still, decades later, so terrified they won't talk about it. But that night they all came in. I remember, them rushing in, and my dad, what's going on? And they're like, that is the only time I'd ever seen all of them visibly shaken, because again, guys, they're just not, even if something scared them, they'd be like, oh yeah, that inside they might be jelly, but the outside they'd be like, no big. But inside they're like, oh my God. But no, there was no facade. There was no grand, guy gesture. And they could not figure out what it was, what had happened, what they experienced. And to them, the way they explained it is, they were like, is that a hawk? It couldn't be. But there's the scream of one of them actually later, a few days later, once things calmed down a little bit, they did have a laugh about the one friend who was like, it's a hawk, it's a hawk. He just couldn't quit saying it's a hawk. And it was, but it wasn't a hawk. And it was the size of a large man. And it had giant wings that went out. So very much, there was a movie, I wish I could remember exact time. It may have just been Gargoyles that came out, and it made me think about what they had described, because it was very much like something where the tree that they had been seeing, very kind of like you said, your friend had the camera behind him, and as he was leaving, the Bigfoot kind of manifested out of where it had been hiding. And so this thing seemed to blend in with the trees, that were there around the lake.
Right.
All of a sudden, what were branches weren't, they were wings. And here he came, and he came at them, and he was coming down very low, and they couldn't get the boat going fast enough to get out of the way. And so they jumped in the water, and they're paddling, and they scrambled to the car, and it's, whole drama. But they said the thing came swooping down at them, but it was like a big man, but it was a beast. It wasn't a man. And they just couldn't put together in their head. They couldn't reconcile what they saw. And, I thought, gosh, was that a gargoyle type situation? Was that a cryptid like, that they've seen?
Chicago, the Birdman.
The Mothman. Yeah. And I thought maybe it's more of a moth, because it did seem more of a Mothman situation, but I had never heard of the Mothman showing up in Texas. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know. Maybe our cryptid friends, if anybody's listening, could tell us, but it very much seemed like that. And
but they have like a Birdman that keeps showing up in Chicago, ostensibly.
Okay. I just never heard of it in Texas.
I've never heard of it in Texas, but Texas is one of those places that Y'all still have places that haven't been explored much.
That's true. We still
So,
have a little bit of the old West here.
yeah,
And, so it was a remote part. And also back in that time, it was early 70s or mid 70s, early to mid 70s. And things were just not as busy. There weren't as many people. And I know people say, well, Dallas has always been busy. I know, I was born and raised there. But there's certain areas, it's not like now.
right.
You went remote, you were remote, you were. That's harder now. But anyway, I just
Yeah.
have always had that question and never been able to kind of discern or figure out what that could have been, because I had not heard other stories in Texas like that. But as you say, yes, in other places, Mothman, that kind of situation, or people thought they saw something gargoyle-esque. But that's always in other states, and I just never knew about that. So I don't know. So
Well,
that's my little question mark.
I know, right? And it's such a big question mark, really,
It's a big question mark. And
because you
they
had
were not
credible
pranksters.
people.
They were not pranksters. They were really no nonsense. And I had never seen them, other than the time that we got everything together and we left with the possible Bigfoot thing. I had never seen any of them panic whatsoever.
Disconcerting when somebody that's your rock panics.
Excuse me, yes. And they were so fearful that whatever they had encountered, they were afraid to even speak about it, because it might somehow summon it or let it know where they were. I don't know. I mean, but that's real fear.
So they thought that it was a cognizant being.
Oh yes, it seemed to be to them. And the screeching, the screaming, but it was heavy and loud, but it echoed, you know, and it was coming right for them. And they dove in the boat, and it didn't get them, but it came back around. It wasn't a one-time situation for them,
So
and
it was hungry.
I guess it was. And they, I mean, they scrambled to get the car, and I'm sure it was a dangerous drive home. But it was something
Yeah, I would think.
I've never seen, not just them, but I haven't seen anybody that deeply afraid of something like that.
Wow.
So I
Well,
believed it.
maybe it was interdimensional.
I don't know. I really don't.
Because I do think, and I know that you're familiar with interdimensional beings, you have that happen on your
Yeah,
land too.
into the front house. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that stuff like that happens. Years and years and years ago, I had a book of Stephen King's short stories, because I can't really do his full books
Oh yeah.
because they're way too plausible,
Mm-hmm.
which is the good author.
Part of the fear factor. Yeah.
Yeah, but I got in a book of his short stories, and the movie The Mist was made from one of those short stories.
That's a scary one.
It's a very scary one.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not, people are always like, ooh, well, the halogen colliders and all these other things. And I'm like, there's been other stuff that could have caused rifts before, CERN.
Sure.
And there's so many, we had nuclear testing, we had atomic testing prior to that. We've had, weaponry that is powerful enough to cause rents. There's so many things that we have done that were so damaging to our atmosphere, to our electrical, system, to so much that it's not unrealistic to think that we could be opening portals with different things. And if you go back and look at things like, there are animals, there are dogs that has survived in Chernobyl.
Oh yes.
And you know, how that happened is astounding because,
Right.
yeah, I saw an article on my newsfeed one day and I was like, oh, whatever. Well, by God. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and
yeah,
they think that they also had noted recently that when checking some of the dogs, they had something that had evolved
yeah,
that was they didn't have cancer,
yes,
and they felt that they wouldn't catch it, whatever had evolved in them. And
yeah.
so it was really interesting.
Well, it is. And, to me, that was fascinating because I had a situation at one point that had to be treated with radioactive iodine.
Hmm.
And, they took it out of 2 munition cases, double gloved, and handed it to and sealed containers inside the munitions cases, handed it to me and said, "Here, take this." And I was like, "Oh, sure. You first."
Yeah,
So, but it was do that or die.
yeah.
And since I'm really fond of kicking around up here and, was just starting my adulthood pretty much, it was, I didn't, I did it. But I'm
Hmm.
monitored now too, but I mean, to the point that I glowed for days. I had to take precautions for the people around me, um, countertops and other surfaces and such. And so, and I'm not the only person that's ever had to go through that. That's something that's done. People with cancer have radiation chips
Hmm.
put in around their tumors and stuff to kill them. So it's not something that's unheard of. What's unheard of is a being creating that for themselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, and that's kind of what they've done. The radiation is killing the cancer cells, I guess.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
when I read that, I was just like, well, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That we've done so much damage, and I'm not a rabid conservationist. Okay. I like the things that have evolved as some of the testing has happened. I wish there had been more knowledge prior to the testing.
Hmm.
But, if you go through the Atomic Museum in Vegas, outside of Vegas, they were trying to get it done. People were dying in droves. The world was going to be speaking German. I mean,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Japanese and German. I mean, it
right.
was so imperative that they find a way to defend.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry,
No.
but Stanton Friedman was one of the people who described that period to me because he worked on the atomic energy, atomic weaponry programs. And when you know, we were friends, I interviewed him a couple of times, but, we talked too when we could. And when I saw that museum, and what had happened, I mean, they had soldiers just ducking down in ditches and letting the waves go over them when they were doing those testings. People were on rooftops in Vegas watching the testing, you know,
Yeah.
and I was like, what the absolute hell?
But, yeah,
Who thought that was an okay idea?
but yeah.
And
Yeah.
people go to Vegas in droves into areas that are contaminated.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have. I've been all over. I love Vegas, gotta tell you. But
Me
every
too.
time we go, we drive just hundreds of miles all over every
I
place.
love around there. David and I did. Well, David goes to play poker. I go and wander. So,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
a couple of times, he'll take time off to go and wander with me. It's so much fun.
Hmm.
Much more fun with him than without him.
Yeah.
So,
And it's probably safer too. Sometimes I think about, some of the trips that my daughter and I have taken, and we've gone so remotely. I'm thinking, sure, that was actually the smartest thing. But we were fine. But I mean,
yeah.
it was maybe pretty remote. But it's beautiful. But yeah, testing also, what concerns me too is I agree with you on that. And then the testing that they've been doing for a long time, different things in the ocean.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think, oh no, because the radio waves disturb, of course.
Everything.
And that's just something I don't guess they'll ever stop the military is just doing what they're going to do.
Well, you know, I was affected by the oil spill personally. My
Oh.
beach was a landfall site.
Oh.
And, you know, our fishing, it got up into our bays.
Mm.
It got everywhere. And it was not as bad as the news portrayed it as a rule.
Yeah.
But that should never, I mean, if you cannot contain something like that, don't put it down there.
Don't put it in there. Yeah.
Just-
And I wonder, you know, again, kind of going back to the UFO situation, so many times I think it's interesting that we'll have sightings amp up, if you will, around nuclear plants sometimes, or around situations where the oil spill happened, you know.
There was a lot during the oil spill.
Yeah. And I think
And that's when there was nobody on the water.
that's right.
Because you could not, I actually was banned because I'm a photographer.
Oh.
And I tried to go to work on one of the boats, like as a fill-in for when they were working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
These men and women were exhausted. They couldn't go home.
Yeah.
They were out pulling boom, trying to, you know, trap the oil. It was something else.
Once you taking pictures of what was out there, which you
I wasn't allowed to take pictures of anything unless I submitted them to BP. And there were times that they actually went out, and there were 2 times I know of that pictures I submitted were up on their website. They were not the pictures I sent. They sent their photographer out to replicate what I did, but with better result, better image things.
Yeah, cleaned it up.
They cleaned them up.
Well, I don't know about you, but I also, besides believing in extraterrestrial, I believe that they're also underwater.
Oh, they are. I mean, I believe that too. I'm saying that with authority, but I feel like there's authority to be had there because UFOs happen a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's naive for us to dismiss anything like that so offhand, as if, oh yes, they could be in the sky, but they couldn't be in the ocean. We don't even know 20% of the ocean. We know more about other things above us than we do what's beneath us,
which I find ludicrous because, you know, the story is always, oh well, it will crush. Well, make a better camera.
Right.
I mean, we are explorers as a species. We want to see things.
Well, and as they go deeper, they think, oh, this is it. Nothing could be down here. And then there's hundreds and sometimes thousands of species of this, that, and the other thing. And they're like, oh, wow, well, couldn't be any more. And that, as you said, cameras get better, technology gets better, and yet here's some more things for you. And the way that they adapt to create their own you know, so that it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me.
And I'm a creationist. And so to me, it's like, isn't that cool that was made to be there? Because it wouldn't survive anywhere else.
Accidents. Everything is
accidental.
Perfectly made. Yeah. And I'm right there with you, you know. So but you know, I know we touched on it, and I said I would come back to it. If you want me to go back to the UFO sightings,
yes.
Okay. So when we moved in, again, nothing waits here. First day I moved in. Anytime I buy a new place or something, I always go in first and say hello, Teal. I just either I'm visiting or I'm the new owner, whatever the situation is. And at this house, I should have known, when I looked at it, everything was beautiful and great. The property, I was just so taken with the property. I wasn't tuned in at all. I really wasn't purposely, I stay shut down as much as I can. And it's great. So I had a bowl of wooden fruit, which I don't have anymore. But anyway, I had this big, heavy bowl of wooden fruit. And when I came in, hi, hello, Teal, blah, blah, blah. And I set it on top of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Well, before I could go down the hallway more than 3 steps going towards one of the master bedrooms, there's one on each end of the house, an ensuite master. But I was going to that one. And before I got like to that second, third step, pow, that hole with astonishing force. That whole bowl and all of the wooden fruit went sailing past me. Thankfully, nothing hit me in the head. It just which also is odd. They must have done it in a certain way.
Yeah.
It went past me and over me. Flying down that hall and into the master bedroom, and I stopped in that third step, and I was like, don't be afraid, don't engage. But I did engage. I stopped, I spun around, and I said, listen, I own this house now. I know you obviously think you still do. And I'm not going to banish you if this behavior doesn't happen. I'm not going to have this. And believe me, you can be made to go.
Yeah.
Nothing happened for a while. So I thought, well, maybe good, Well, nothing happened in here so much, little things, but outside we had this, housewarming party. And so, as I said before, there were people who worked for the government. There were people who worked for FEMA. There were people who were in law enforcement. There was teachers, artists. There was a big mix of people. Okay. And so I don't like smoking in the house. And so I would ask people, hey, can you go between the front house and back house in that yard? There's an area, and just smoke out there. So even though it was cold, they did that. And then they just a few minutes later, they're like, hey, come out here. And I was like, what? They're like, no, they were literally, a couple of them came and just dragged me by the arm, come out here. And we looked, they didn't need to explain it to me. Like, they were starting to, but I looked up to see what they were all staring at. And there were 2 cylinder type craft just hovering. So immediately you think, okay, for what you can see, it's a more cigar shaped ish cylinder. It's not a helicopter. It's not an airplane. You're trying to figure out what it is. And all of a sudden a third one appears to the side and a little bit up. And then they kind of move a little bit. And then they start doing what looked like, as we discussed it later, at first you're just watching this kind of a zigzag, almost like, I've seen it on television now, but back then, that's 26 years ago. I wasn't into all that. I didn't, whatever. It was like a zigzaggy searching, looking around, kind of thing. And then they zap back really fast. And then all of a sudden they're hovering, and we're just watching, and we're like, what is this? Because, it has to be, the consensus was that there has to be UFOs. Because what else is it? And I said, well, FEMA's not tar. Maybe it's something. And they're like, but what? And there was a couple of people that worked for FEMA, and they're like, I don't think so. There's tunnels that run under my house all the way to Oklahoma. So there's some weird, this is an odd property. And but that was very strange. And then it was this whole thing from the time they went out there and saw them originally to the time I was out there, and then to the time that they just all of a sudden, they went so fast, they were just gone. It was about 20 minutes. That's a long time.
Wow, that's a long sighting.
A really long time. And then out the front, like, what is that noise? Because when I bought this place, now it's on a very busy, a highway. When I bought it, it was 2-lane road, and it's quiet. And all these cars, you could hear cars going by. All of them, no kidding, were big black cars. And they were all going, because you go down, let's see, 1, 2, 3 house links, and you can turn, and then you go down towards the back roads, towards all that empty land, and FEMA and all that kind of stuff. there's I'm like, let's jump in the car. What a stupid idea. Let's jump in the car.
And follow the men in black.
I mean, I didn't even think about that. And I was like, but I shouldn't have done it. So we get out to the driveway.
Something behind you just left.
We get out to driveway and like, let's turn. And then, we all kind of think about it for a minute because they're going so fast. And then we realize where they're all turning. And then I'm like, well, wait a minute, there's nothing that's going to ultimately dead end, that ultimately dead ends. There is one offshoot road, but and then we were like, maybe that's a lot of government type looking vehicles. So the people that were with, they're like, no, we need to not get involved. Excuse me. So we didn't, but there have been times that other people have been surprised. I haven't, thankfully. But I also don't go out to the back end of the pasture at night. Have been back there, putting something away, doing whatever, and felt like air, but didn't hear anything, and looked up and were as surprised as the people in the craft that it was like an unmarked helicopter, but the noise that should have been there was not there. And they swear that these people were dressed in the typical Men in Black kind of way, or that they look quite right as humans. And I take everything with a grain of salt, but I'm also not, I don't know. I didn't experience it. I have no idea. But that's happened to people back there a couple of times. And odd lights. I know that people say, well, sure, there's cars, there's this and that, but no, you got to think, like, I've got property, and then there's a house blocking anything like that. And sometimes it looks like those little creepy alien type lights that come, searching through window tops and bottoms and stuff, and it illuminates the room in such a way. I don't know what on earth that would be coming from my back land, right? Because it's not lit up back there. It's only like little searchy lights. And that happened a number of times through the years. And it's always disconcerting because, I don't want to have any interaction with them. And yet.
That's funny because the first sighting that I had, I was going into 7th grade and was with a bunch of, Special Forces Green Beret paratroopers, because that's what my dad was when he had gone into the reserves at that point. And I saw a craft, and I was like, look at that. Because I saw them jump out of everything, right? I went to their jumps. And every one of them turned around and looked, and they looked at each other and said, oh, that's a helicopter. And I was like, well, pull the other one, because that's not a helicopter. I've watched you jump out of helicopters.
Not a helicopter. But they want to go to the helicopter.
But there were no rotors.
Right.
There was no sound. And it was standing still.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, don't even try to tell me that. I didn't know anything about UFOs. I was in 7th grade. I had just had Jeffrey the Ghost with Kathleen Tucker Wyndham come to my school right before we got out for summer. So I knew about paranormal stuff because I experienced it. And then I had a paranormal writer come with her ghost to my school. So, I'm sitting there, and when I went to bed that night, there were green and white lights that were flashing outside my window. And I was just kind of like, nope. Because, we lived in a old World War II Army hospital, basically. They had made it into student housing in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And my dad was a doctoral candidate. So we qualified for that. But anyway, I just pulled the sheets up, pulled the covers up, and said, nope, not today.
Yeah.
So, I knew that we shouldn't have, if they'd been red, even I knew that green lights were not going to be my friend.
They weren't going to be your friend. And the thing is like they're never looking on my land. They're looking on all that empty land out there for something, and people have seen like odd little lights out there, just like in the grass.
Are they like spirit lights?
I wonder. I don't know because I haven't seen them. Again, I don't go out there. But people say it's like little lights. So it could be spirit lights, maybe. It could be if somebody, I don't know, and it's private property, and I've never in all these years gone over there. Don't know if it's something that it's light.
Light are you?
Something maybe it lights up. I don't know if it's a tracker light. Doesn't sound like it so much the way they describe it. Maybe it is just that, and I don't know.
I've seen those when my husband's a poker player. We go to Cherokee, and it's usually an off-season time frame. And like as I get ready to close the Blue Ridge Parkway and stuff. But I've been up there because I heard about from a guest. I heard about the Thomas Divide lights, and so I've gone up there, and every time I go, is this true?
I'm disappointed.
No, it's true. I've never not seen them when I've gone up there.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to one of the rangers about that one day, and I said, I'm doing research on this. I'm trying to document these things. I've got footage, but I really need to get up there, and I'm not hiking because I see a lot of boar mamas with babies and stuff that time of year. I'm not going around boar at that point. And she was like, do you really see them that often? I said, well, I've never been up there that I didn't. And we used to go every year, a couple of times a year. And so she's like, my kids have lived here their whole lives. They're 18 and 20, and they've never seen them, and they've gone looking for them.
Wow.
And David got me a topography map so that I could see where they were. And I mean, they're not just one color. They're
that's what I was going to ask you, what you saw, what color.
They're pink and they're white, and there's some kind of gray blues. And the only time I've really been disconcerted there was when I was filming and my camera was acting wonky, and I was like, come on now. And because I had looked down and I looked up, and one had crossed the divide and was on my side.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what?
It noticed you.
No, they knew I was there.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? No.
Yeah.
I am not bothering you. I'm not doing anything to harm you. I don't have any interest in harming you, but I expect that same courtesy.
Yeah.
So
I have not filmed anything. I've not even tried. I've not even, I just want it to just not be there.
Well, you can but you can film them. I mean, they let me film them.
I haven't. The only thing I've had, and I actually, sometimes when I just am like, no, not anymore today, I'll turn off some of the security cameras around because they'll catch spirits.
Right.
They've caught like spirits different times, and they've caught when I'm in the front house, a spirit, it was caught on camera coming from the back door in this way. And then the other camera came on and something had turned the lights on in part of the house in the back house. And it's you have to, where it had done it, it did it on purpose, I think, to just prove it was it, because there was a switch you have to turn on, and then it was these lit up trees, and you had to turn them on individually, but it all happened at once.
Really. That's cool.
Those are some, so there's some light phenomena and different spirits that you'll see on the cameras, but I've never, I never want to interact with. I've never even none of us did. I guess it was just a funny thing, but none of us tried to photograph the craft, or I would not. I don't experiences, but I just never did.
I do not try to photograph craft, mainly because when they show up, I'm not quick enough. Okay.
That's true.
Because I'm laying in a hammock, right? I don't get
relaxing.
Yeah, I don't have. Well, I usually do have my phone with me, but kids. But
spirits and lights, I don't have any. But I really don't. Try to.
Well,
Because there they are. There's the evidence. And you're like, because you can kind of ignore it if you don't look at it or hear it. You're just like, did I hear that? Oh,
I don't wait. I think maybe, oh, my ears are ringing. Yeah, I've been there, done that. But with the spirit lights, the interesting thing was I did not know whether they were intelligent or not, or whether they were, truly swamp gas, which people try to pass them off of, or somebody doing it, which is why David got me the topography map of that mountain so that I could ascertain if there were houses, because it was of that year's map. And
yeah,
I could ascertain where houses were. I could see where, people had garages and that kind of thing. And if I really zoomed in, I could look and see like tree stands and that kind of thing, if there were any. But I always questioned whether they were intelligent, right?
hmm
Until that one crossed over, and it was a pink one that crossed over to me. And it was literally, my car is, I'm going to do it this way. My car is here. There's a brick wall here and a tree dangling off here. And it was right at that tree's branches, right before the brick wall that was right next to my car.
Wow.
And I was like, no, you don't need to come any closer. I'm not harming you.
Yeah.
And because I found that most of the time with spirits, I hoped it would work with that too. But if I just say, I'm here to research, I'm not here to harm you or bring attention to you. I'm here to learn.
Yeah.
And if you'll just bear with me, I'm not going to cause you any harm, and I'm not going to try to move you.
Did it go away?
Oh, the spirit light? No, the spirit light stayed there until I left.
Wow.
So,
Interesting.
but
I
mean,
haven't experienced that one.
I think it was interested in why I was looking at it,
Mm-hmm.
why I had a camera.
Yeah. Now, is this the same area? I remember you and I and Mark Foltz were speaking, and you and Mark had encountered craft, and down a certain road, y'all both had. Oh yeah, that road. Was this around that area?
No, that was in Tennessee,
Oh, okay.
and I think that was the one in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
But no, this is a place that it's just a pretty overlook.
Mm-hmm.
And
I guess they
somebody
think.
told me that I would see lights there.
Yeah.
So I went, and my husband was like, you do not need to be going up the Blue Mountain Parkway at night by yourself. I said, well, then you don't need to be playing poker, so you can go with me.
Right.
So I got to go by myself. Sometimes it's easier to get forgiveness than permission.
That's right.
But it was one of those things that I was so disconcerted when it showed up. And that was the day that I saw, the mama with her 13 little baby boars, and
yeah.
I'm like, not getting out of my car.
No,
I don't want to be lunch because they are mean.
Border of Mexico. As a teenager, I was visiting a friend's ranch there, and it was very wild land. And we were out riding, and we were told not to go too far. I didn't think we were, but I guess we did. And boy, out of nowhere, seriously out of nowhere, these wild boar started chasing us. I had never encountered that, even though I born and raised in Texas. I was city girl, Dallas, right? So this deep in Mexico, and or on the border of Mexico, and man, they're fast. They are fast.
They are fast.
It's just that, of course, and also you're trying to hang on to the horse that's trying to throw you off because it's scared too. And we were flying into the ranch's, gates, which they had people there, and the gates, they shut the gates and they're firing at the wild boar. But we made it. Wow. And we were, but it was very close. I mean, they were within just a few yards of us. They were right on our tails, and I was hanging on for all it was worth to this horse. And I had on back my boyfriend's brother, who had never ridden a horse before, and I said, I've been writing since I was little. So you hang on. We're just going to go. That's always the way it starts, right? Something bad. We're just going to do this one little thing. We'll come back. And if you
Right.
get it all, we'll come right back. And who would have thought that we would be chased by a wild boar? And man, that was, woo, it was a beautiful place. They had these gorgeous, like lemon trees, huge lemon,
Oh,
pick them out and make your own lemonade from the front yard. But, then I understood why they had so many ranch hands and things and the big gates and everything, because it was wild out there. So that was my experience with them. So no, please don't go wandering around, because they'll come and get
no. And especially mamas are meaner than,
very
Yeah.
protective. Yeah.
and they were very young pigs.
We have
So
a few divots here and there, but people that are probably, 10 acres or so around me, they're the ones, of course, they're farther out in the wilderness, if you will. Not wilderness, but,
yeah.
not traveled. They get a lot of wild boar, and they tear up their yards, and among other things, so they have people that come in and try to capture them or hunt them or something. But yeah, no, I don't think people have enough of a respect, because they think, what could they do? So
Anything they want to.
they will eat you. That you would be the babies. Yeah, we don't want that.
But we did not, and we're almost out of time, but we did not get into interdimension.
Oh, you want me to tell it really fast? I can tell it fast.
Go fast.
So I had no interactions prior to intergalactic beings. I had only, discerned different spirits, different ghosts, even dark spirits, different levels, and a handful, 3 or 4 demons. So I had just going to the far back of the house. I was gonna go let the dogs out into the middle yard, and it was just a pretty night. It was dusky, and I thought, that's nice, just standing there. And I turned back around. Something kind of just went up my spine, a little bit of a tingle. And I turned around, but not afraid, just like, oh, what? And I looked back into that main bedroom, and a toy, like a little stuffed dog toy clown, was just going very, very slow in circles, very slow, right at the top of the ceiling, all the way in, and then gently rest down on the bedside table. And I was like, huh, I could not discern that energy. And so I didn't interact with it. I didn't say anything. I just was like, it did not feel hostile, but I didn't know what it was. And I know enough about not interacting and diving into something that you don't know. So I just did nothing. And I could feel after, not even 2 minutes, probably, a minute and a half or so, it was gone, like completely. I was out of my depth, which I thought I was pretty good at. But of course, as soon as you know something, you know that you don't know enough about anything. So I contacted an expert in California, and she said, oh, that was an intergalactic being. She goes, I don't think you've had that. I said, I've never had this experience. And I said, I didn't feel it was hostile. She goes, no, it was coming to visit you because as you were astral traveling in your sleep and going farther and farther out, and I said, I have been feeling odd. Like I've been I could almost feel like I was coming back in my body, but it took a while, took a minute. And she goes,
Right.
yeah. And she goes, as you travel astrally like that, you leave these little residual, imprints, and it followed you. Y'all had an interaction, and it wanted to say hello. It was in your dimension. And so it just popped in to say hello. And when you didn't interact with it, it left. And, end of story. And so she started to teach me more about this intergalactic situation and beings and travels and different things. And it's really fascinating, and never had anything like that happen before. Since I've not had that happen, but I've had some sort of downloads of imagery of spaceships and different types of craft that I've never seen on a movie or a show or anything, and the way that they would open up differently and stuff. And
Oh my gosh.
it was very future speak, it was like in the future, and it was very unusual. But that's my bit for that.
Well, we are completely out of time. So you're going to have to come back again. And I know this was a short time between shows, but I just so wanted to continue our conversation, but we have got to go because you know what? We have got the Cryptid Creatures podcast coming up with Brian Brock and Todd Stevens. They're right behind me here on the X. And be sure and check out all of our shows here on KUNX Digital Broadcasting. I am glad that you're here. Teal L. Gray. Find her on Amazon. Google her website. Love her work. You're going to enjoy it too. Thank you, Teal. And for everyone else, thank you so much. Be blessed. Have a good week. See you same cat time, same cat channel.